Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Remote No Pressure Podcast. We're all super excited that you're here today, tuning in. Every Sunday night, we publish a new episode, and we also send out an email to our mailing list. And last Sunday night, I sent out the email, and my wife comes up to me on Monday morning as I'm pouring my coffee, and she's got like this horrified look on her face, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, Jeff," she's like, "it's not the quintessential fly fop, it's the quintessential fly shop with an S." Oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed. But to be honest with you, if you get my mailing list, you've probably seen a few spelling errors, let's be honest. So if you subscribe to our mailing list, or let's just say you don't subscribe to our mailing list and you would like to see a train wreck every Monday morning, feel free to go to remotenopressure.com and sign up for our mailing list, and you'll never know what you'll find. You may even find out what a quintessential fly fop is. But no, just kidding. But no, things aren't perfect. This podcast we started out behind a card table and a really old iMac, and listenership is really growing, and we're really making a go at it, but things aren't perfect. Sometimes you may hear a dog in the background or one of my kids flushing the toilet if you listen really close to some back episodes. But that's just how we roll. We're just making a go at it because we really believe that there's a lot to this whole fly fishing thing, and just learning how to rest and calm our minds a bit, whether it's fly fishing or yoga or whatever it is, what some of our guests have recommended. We're on this journey to bring a little peace of mind to so many people that are out there struggling just at work and raising families and just debt and all these things that just kind of bring this dissonance to our mind. We're on a mission to bring that, to calm that as much as we can, and to help everyone, help the world out with that. And it's not going to be perfect, but we just have to do it. There's something inside of us that just puts us on this journey, and we can't describe it even. It's something in our bones that we have to get the word out, not just about fly fishing, but that there's so much more to life than just going to work every day and coming home and making dinner and then crashing on the couch because you're so tired from work and you're not satisfied. We really believe that there's more to life than just that. And we all have seasons, and for some reason we decided to start this podcast and to write the music and do what we're doing because we truly believe in that. We truly believe in the power of fly fishing and resting in our day-to-day lives. This week we have Driftless Angler fly shop owner Mat Wagner from Wisconsin. He's going to share with us a lot about how he came to learn the power of fly fishing. We're going to talk a little bit about the awesome fishery that has made his fly shop successful, and we're even going to discuss manners that our grandma and grandpas should have taught us. And it's just a great time hanging out with him. We really appreciate you, Matt, for spending some time with us from the Driftless Angler. Welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire. Today on the Remote No Pressure Podcast, we have Mat Wagner from the Driftless Angler. Thank you very much for joining us today, Matt.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So tell us, you're a fly shop owner. Can you just tell us a little bit about your shop and where it's at and when it started?
Yeah, absolutely. My wife and I own the Driftless Angler Fly Shop in Viroqua, Wisconsin, which is tucked in the southwest corner of the state, right in the heart of the Driftless area, so surrounded by hundreds of miles of Spring Creek. We've had the shop open now for 11 years.
Wow, that's great. Now, you've probably seen a lot of changes in retail over the last 11 years. What would you say has been the secret to your success staying in business for 11 years? That's quite a run.
Well, luckily, we're backed up by an incredible fishery. The retail end of things in the fly shop world, as competition gets tighter from big box stores and you see more and more fly shops closing, the ones who are lucky enough to have a good fishery or a good guide service to back them up are the ones who seem to be successful right now. Other than that, we've also seen a really good trend towards Fly rod prices, premium rods are always premium rods, but the quality of rods in that kind of middle range and even the lower end, making fly fishing a bit more accessible to people, as well as the rise of women's gear. My wife, who's co-owner of the shop and guide, she also runs womensflyshop.com, an online women's community and store. The rise of female anglers in fly fishing, the acceptance of female anglers and actually designing gear has been a huge part in growing the fly fishing business overall, but especially for our shop.
That's interesting, Matt. Those 2 points. This is not the first time that they've come up on this podcast. I mean, we had an artist here, Sarah Landstrom, who talked about when she first got into fly fishing, she had to buy men's waders, and they didn't even have women's waders in the fly shop. And now they're pretty much, in most fly shops, women can find those. Why do you think we've seen more females getting into the sport of fly fishing, or do you think they've always been there, but they were just kind of a neglected demographic?
Well, I think they've always been there, but the story that you just told is a perfect point. They've definitely been neglected throughout the last decade, if not 25 years. Is that there was never anybody designing gear for them, and it's, you don't have to make it smaller and make it pink to make it women's gear. They actually wanted something that would fit and something that they could fish in and not be treated differently just because they're female.
Right. Now, before we started the podcast, you had mentioned that you and your wife go out on dates fishing, and that she is a fishing guide as well, correct?
Yes, correct.
So tell us a story about how the two of you met and ended up getting married.
In the long roundabout way, we actually met down in Taos, New Mexico. I had just gotten off of a job helping a buddy start up a guide service up in Fernie, British Columbia on the Elk River, and needed a place to work. So I had fished Taos years and years ago and talked to a fly shop owner down there. Got hired as a guide and manager, and actually met her through one of my fishing buddies down there. And, instantaneously, fishing became part of our relationship. She didn't get an engagement ring. She got a rod, reel, and then waders and boots instead. So we've been fishing pretty much as dates since day one. So it's nice to share both of our passions is fly fishing, obviously. So going out for an hour or two here and there and kind of connecting with the water, with the fish, and with each other is a great thing.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I know. That's great to hear that, Matt. Now, how long have you guys been married? 11 years now, you said? Am I right?
Yep. We've actually been married about 13 now.
13. Okay. Well, great. When's your anniversary?
It is actually leap day.
Okay. So you only have an anniversary once every 4 years, or?
Yep, exactly. You can make a big trip somewhere exotic every 4 years instead of doing it every year then.
Yeah, my wife and I are coming up on our 13th anniversary too. That's why I was curious when your anniversary was.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So you're a Sparty, is that correct?
Yes. Yep. I graduated from Michigan State in 2001. And that career path in life was either go to grad school out in Stanford or go shuttle boats and tie flies for a season in Fernie, British Columbia on the Elk River. So it's, now that I've owned a fly shop for quite a few years, it's kind of obvious which route I took.
So how did you get into fly fishing?
When I was little, I was lucky enough to grow up in suburban Detroit in a little town called Rochester, Michigan. And when I say I was lucky, it had a trout stream that ran right through it, with bikeable distance from my home. And it also had a small Orvis shop that was there called Paint Creek Outfitters. This is 25, 27 years ago at this point. But I needed something to do. My parents were, get the heck out of the house. I had a buddy that liked to trout fish a little bit. So he and I would go down to the creek and I'd watch him fish a little bit and said, this isn't quite right. And I'd known about fly fishing. So I went into the fly shop and started hanging around and became the little teenager shop rat down there. I took a couple of casting lessons, and by the age of 14, I was already working there.
Wow. So you just did your dad or mom fish at all, or it's something you picked up there in Rochester?
Something I picked up completely on my own. I've got a gigantic family, and I know one other person who's a fly angler in my entire family.
Well, that's great. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so I'm on the other side of the state is where I sit. So I know right where Rochester is. What would you say with your wife, and you say that the two of you go out and connect with nature and connect with each other. Can you tell us a little bit about that and just how that helps you guys in your marriage and in life, being out and connecting with nature?
Absolutely. I highly encourage everybody to get their spouse, to get their partner, to get their boyfriend or girlfriend fishing with them. Don't teach them. That's a bad idea. Have somebody else teach them. But eventually, as you kind of fish together, you get to share the experience that you both really, really like. For us, we're lucky enough, being in the driftless areas, we have tons of streams that we can close the shop and go, hey, let's go fish for an hour or two. Take the kid with us, or if he's over at his friend's house, whatever it may be. It's just a good way to kind of relax and unwind and forget about regular life for a while and just kind of be outside and be fishing and be with each other.
That's great. Now, how did your wife find fly fishing?
She actually grew up in a family of anglers. Both of her brothers fish conventionally and fly fish. So she dabbled in it here and there. Took a couple of lessons when she was living out on the West Coast. And then when she was in Taos, owned a fly rod and kind of dinked around with it a little bit here and there. But then it was kind of a prerequisite to continue dating me, as she had to fish a little bit, because that's almost all that I did. So that was the, shoehorned her right into the fly fishing lifestyle, so to speak.
Well, that's great. Now, if you would have went to grad school out at Stanford, what would you have studied?
I actually have a degree in history with a specialization in late antiquity.
Okay.
Which means absolutely nothing. I would have been a history professor or a history teacher at a school somewhere, which is an excellent job and career. But I'm definitely happy with the path that I chose.
Now, what made you decide to study history?
Well, that is a very good question. When I was in college, I think I probably switched majors about 8 or 10 times. The university loved me because they get $20 or $30 every time I declared a new major. But it's just something that always kind of resonated with me. Reading stories, trying to figure out why people did what they did, or how societies or civilizations did what they did, and how they rose, how they collapsed, all that good stuff. Just fitting together a puzzle and a narrative of why things are the way they are and why things were the way they were.
Now, did you study a certain particular time period, or is there one that stuck out to you more than others, or what did you enjoy
late
studying?
antiquity is roughly the year, just say 400 to about the year 1100. So what would have been the collapse of the Roman Empire, the rise of Christianity, things of that nature.
It's funny that you should bring that up, because that you studied that, because I'd love to pick your brain. I mean, everyone that listens to this, I would say 98% of the people that listen to this podcast fly fish. With the exception of my mom, probably. But let me ask you this question, because we all fly fish. We have a lot in common. But sometimes we talk about other subjects too. So we're talking about the fall of the Roman Empire. And you feel free to just say, hey, next question. But are you seeing any similarities in America and how we're headed? Because some people say that we're headed toward the fall, like the Roman Empire. Do you see that, or is that something that doesn't resonate with you as someone who has studied that particular subject?
Well, the easiest way to answer that, the first rule of fly fishing guiding: you don't talk politics, you don't talk religion, you don't talk relationships. But having said that, you have to be careful to kind of fall into the trap of saying, hey, this happened to this civilization, this happened to this civilization, and that's why they fell apart. And you can always kind of jam and force what you're seeing in your own life into those formulas. And it's foggy memory at this point, but there was actually a really kind of broad brushstroke study of certain factors that led to a decline of certain empires. And it was like a 16-point list or something like that. The introduction of some different kind of mystery religion or philosophy or whatever it may be, or the rotting of the central, the core of the empire and going out to the periphery. And you can always kind of fit those into what you see in your day-to-day life. In my personal opinion, and this is completely subjective, sure, I see our country, our empire declining. If it's going to disappear anytime soon in my lifetime, in my kids' lifetime, 4 or 5 generations, I have no idea. We can't predict anything. So, but there are definitely some signs of an aging empire is the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's funny that you talk about you mentioned religion and politics. First rule of guiding is not to talk about religion or politics, but that's really the first rule in life that my grandparents had. Yeah,
absolutely.
And they were a lot smarter than me. And the older I get, I realize that hey, they knew a lot more than I did.
Yep.
But it's very interesting. And I think with anything, you can connect dots. I mean, we can all play armchair quarterback and say, well, if you take a look at this, there's always something to connect. But I think every empire has a lifespan, and eventually it's inevitable. Like you said, I don't know the time frame or my kids or my grandkids' lifetime. I don't know about all that, but eventually, it runs its course. I would think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's tough to tell with any kind of aging empire, which we can consider what we are at this point, if it's degrading and dying, or if it's just maturing too. So that's for historians that will look at us 1,000 years down the road, assuming that any kind of history for us exists. They'll be able to say exactly what's happening in the 2000s.
Right. Do you think that moving to a computer and cloud-based type memories, papers and everything is on computer now? Do you think 1,000, just picking your brain, but do you think in 1,000 years from now they'll be able to find out more information, or do you think that computer will? I mean, because you could disappear pretty easily if a hacker or something was trying to get you. Do you think that there will be enough historical evidence of our being on this planet?
It's tough to tell because you said, computer memory, computer data is impermanent. It's not like something that was chiseled in stone. You're never going to have a Rosetta Stone from our generation. We have to hope that in some way, shape, or form, some of our important information, culture information, religious information, societal information is preserved in some way, shape, or form. But there is always the danger of the power going out, so to speak, or a massive sunspot or something along those lines happens and wipes everything out, and we have no record. We're definitely moving into that digital age where everything's there, but it's not permanent in any way, shape, or form.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thought, we talked to Bob White, who was an artist, and he talked about that a lot, pictures and the process of photography and how it's changed, and how if his studio caught on fire, he'd grab his old slides, would be the first thing he would grab, but it's something physical, and he's I think he's onto something there. Now you had mentioned, or on your website, you had mentioned like up in British Columbia, you were a guide. Were there any clients in particular or stories or anything that happened to you as a guide that really was a turning point in your life or career, or something that really stands out to you when you think about your guiding life?
Well, in terms of my guiding career, actually didn't guide in British Columbia. That would have been a big no-no, especially at the time I was up there. I was a legal border jumper from the South, so I wasn't able to actually work. But in my guiding career in general, the thing that always brings me back, keeps the burnout factor low, or just, makes me want to keeps me hungry to be a guide and to be an angler in general, is really to introduce somebody to a different aspect of fly fishing in general. Sure, we can put people on fish. Sure, we can, teach them how to drift and things of that nature. But it's when you get the person who, I'm a fly angler and I want to catch these fish and I want to come to the area, but you get them looking down at rocks on the creek bed and going, oh, well, that's kind of cool. That's kind of neat. Or, when we have our clients up in British Columbia and they're fishing with the outfitter and the guides up there, is they have a really nice cutthroat come and eat their fly, and they miss that fish because they're looking at the scenery, looking at the mountain. It's taking people out of their comfort zone, out of their place, and kind of having them feel like they're a kid again. where they're out in nature, they're out on the water, and they go, hey, that's really cool. And it's not that primary focus of, I need to catch this giant fish and take a picture and put it on my Instagram and Facebook page. It's being out there, being, some sort of solitude, being cheesy to say, but a reconnect with nature and kind of forgetting about the day-to-day grind. And that, when you get those moments, that's what really keeps me going as a guide and an angler.
Was there a time or something that happened to you when you switched, or were you always like a results, I just want to catch fish? Or what was that thing that made you realize that it's not just about catching the fish, that there's more out here than that?
I wouldn't say that it was necessarily a client that did that. It was really my own natural progression as an angler. And I think to an extent, everybody goes through that same progression where first you want to catch a fish, then you want to catch a boatload of fish, then you're only going to go after really big fish. And you finally come to a point that you realize that it's, and again, this sounds super, super cheesy and cliche, but you just want to be fishing. It's about being outside. It's about seeing the fish. It's about a sense of familiarity with the fly rod or a fly or a creek or whatever it may be, where you just kind of lose yourself in the moment. And it's not that I got to do this. It's not regimented. It's not, I have to go, I have to walk to this hole, I have to make this cast, I have to catch this fish. It's, I want to go outside, I want to relax, I want to forget about things for a while and maybe catch a few fish, and that's the icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm. How long did that progression take you?
Well, I started fly fishing when I was about 13. So through all the turbulent teenage years, I went through most of the stages there. And really probably when I had just about graduated college is it all kind of clicked to me. That's when you reach, everybody will write about the zen of the fly fishing. But right about my junior or senior year, you could probably point to when I made the decision to make fly fishing my career, my life. At that point, then I knew that was just kind of my thing. That spoke to me, and that's what I wanted to do. And that's pretty much when I reached that point that I just like to be out fishing right now. If I don't take a cast and I'm watching other people catch fish and, having a good time with good friends, that's as important to me than, counting numbers or catching a huge fish. Don't get me wrong, there are days that I want to go out there and do that, but most of the time it's just kind of being out and enjoying the fishery.
You were saying earlier about the fly shops in the Midwest, and we had Pat Ehlers on here recently. Would you say there's quite a camaraderie with the fly shop owners within the Midwest?
It's a really cool thing that all of the fly shop owners in the Midwest get along. We all know each other. We all visit each other's fly shops. When we're at shows, we all hang out. If somebody comes down and fishes the Driftless, we'll put them up in our house. We have dinner together, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really neat kind of grouping of all like-minded anglers, like-minded business people that all get along. And that's kind of in contrast, and again, it's an umbrella statement, but the feel of the vibe of the West is kind of the, more of a hey dude and machismo and a really big competition where they don't tend to really like each other or interact with each other. So I think within the upper Midwest specifically is we have a really good group of people that all kind of help each other out and share experiences and get along and kind of get that we're all in this crazy thing together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when talking to Pat, he said that, and I agree, being in Michigan, we have some of the best trout fishing in the world in the Midwest, but we don't have the mountains, and so we don't have the sexiness of the Rockies in our backyard, but we do have some great fishing in the Midwest.
Well, the cool thing about the Midwest is you can take a state, we'll use Wisconsin because I'm here. Mm-hmm. You can start at my shop in the Driftless area and catch a boatload of trout on spring creeks and have a really good time. You can then drive 3-4 hours north and be in the smallmouth and musky fly fishing capital of the world. You can go to the northeast corner of the state and fish for some trophy smallmouth there. You can visit the southeast corner of the state. So they're very short drives, stuff that you would drive from major trout stream to major trout stream out west. You can catch pretty much every species of the fish, have different variety of creeks, have different variety of rivers. You can fish the Great Lakes for lake run brook trout and lake run brown trout. So you get this really vast experience all within Michigan, all within Minnesota, all within Wisconsin, that you really can't get anywhere else in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. It's a great place to be as a fly angler, because you only get bored January and February when there's too much ice on the on the lakes.
That's right. Well, they just opened Wisconsin's trout fishing season the first Saturday in January.
Oh,
and
great.
if you're really bored, our creeks don't freeze. They're spring creeks. Mm-hmm. So even when it's 40 or 50 below with wind chill, we still have midges hatching and rising fish. It is a bear to fish because everything freezes up when you look at it, but you could actually go out and fish if you really wanted to.
Yeah, that sounds like steelhead fishing. So,
yes.
Yeah. Is there a particular time when you were out fishing, Matt? What's that one story that you can remember from fishing?
The one story that I remember from fishing, they all kind of blend into each other at this point. I would say the one thing that really sticks out in my mind in the whole fishing career, my fishing life, so to speak, the one thing that really sticks out in my mind is when we first moved here. I was still fairly young and just starting a business, had a very young family. And, I'm thinking, I'm this great fly angler and I know exactly what I'm doing. I've spent all this time out west and I did, a bunch of steelhead and salmon in Michigan, this, that, and the other. When we actually moved to the Driftless area, when we were opening up our shop, we moved here in August, and it was a drought August. The first day we pulled into what would eventually be the shop, it was over 100 degrees and sunny. Thinking out west, this is no problem. I've got this. I've fished in this weather before. It actually took me 2 weeks to hook a fish in the Driftless area of Wisconsin.
Wow.
And at that point, the panic was setting in, going, oh, God, what did I do? What did I do? I just, moved myself and my family and put up all this money and started opening the shop. But it took me that long to kind of change the pace and learn this fishery. It's a unique place. It's a different place. But it actually took me 2 weeks to actually figure out and kind of unlock the beginning steps of how to fish this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's got to be, like you said, panic starts to set in. Your career path, Matt, is not an ordinary career path. I mean, you went out there and started a shop, which is not that abnormal, but you took a risk and it's paid off. Whenever you told your parents, "Hey, I'm not going to Stanford. I want to tie flies and take people fishing," were they pretty supportive of you, like family being your parents and siblings and whatnot, or did they
absolutely. Yeah, my family knew I was nuts from when I started fly fishing, so they put up with me. And when I was in high school, and I was the dork kid who went on spring break with my mom because she'd fly me to fly fishing destinations and buy me dinners. So they knew I was nuts, anyways. But again, I talked to them and kind of told them what I was thinking, and they said, "Yeah, cool, go for it. That sounds like that could be really good, and that sounds like that could be really fun." So yeah, it was a fairly easy transition. So we were in Taos, my wife and I were in Taos and doing what we were doing there. And I was guiding and managing a fly shop. And we had just had my youngest son, Owen. And we were looking for a better place to raise our family. New Mexico was gorgeous. Taos itself is a lovely, lovely city. It has its problems, as all cities do. So we were looking for a place to kind of start our own thing and put roots down and kind of become a true family. So when we were looking to start our family and start our life elsewhere, the gentleman that I grew up in Michigan, the guy that I grew up fishing with in Michigan was from Minnesota originally. So we'd always sit down when we were at the end of the day of fishing and say, where would you open up some sort of fishing business, be it a fly shop or a guide service outfit or whatever it may be? And the spring creeks of the Midwest always came up in the top 4, 5, 6. And when you got rid of the goofy ones like Tasmania or trying to find some secret hidden tailwater down in Tennessee, it was always in the top 2 or 3. Wow. So when we were in Taos, we were looking for a place to move, looking for a change of pace, a place to kind of put roots down. I looked at my wife, Jerry, and I said, "Jerry, why don't we go to Wisconsin?" And she looked at me and like I had just kicked a puppy and said, "Wisconsin? Where the heck would I ever want to move there?" So eventually, we looked at this area, did our research, and this town is super cool. One of the reasons we picked this town is it's a town. You go fish the Bighorn at Fort Smith, and you have 5 trailer parks, a Baptist church, a restaurant that may or may not be open, and 3 fly shops. Where you look at Viroqua, when we first moved, they've got a really cool organic food co-op. They've got 2 or 3 different schools, public school, private school, Waldorf school, all that good stuff. We've got good eating and drinking establishments. The Driftless Cafe in our town, the chef was just nominated for a James Beard Award.
Wow.
So we have this little town that actually has food, it has live music, it has places to stay, outside of 2 or 3 motels, as well as this just phenomenal fishery. And it's still the upper Midwest, so it's a bit like Mayberry. People still wave to you at the street. They remember your name at the farmer's market or the restaurant type deal. So
right.
It's this really cool kind of unique place. And once we came and visited, we fell in love with it right away. And then on top of that, the fishing's phenomenal, so that helps too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's that's really cool that you guys found that and became a family and put some roots down. Now, is your wife, where is she from originally, Matt?
She's from Washington State originally. Me growing up in Michigan, obviously it wasn't that big of a leap. But from her, she went from Washington, went to school in Seattle, lived in L.A. for a while, and then it was in Albuquerque and Taos. So it's it was a different lifestyle, different philosophy coming into the Midwest. But we've settled in pretty nicely now.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. If people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
The easiest place to get information on the shop and the fishery is visit our website, which is driftlessangler.com. We're all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff as well. But the best place to find information is the website, which is driftlessangler.com.
Okay, well, we'll put that link up in the show notes, and we really appreciate you taking some time with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you for listening to the Remote No Pressure podcast. Be sure to check out our website at remotenопроpressure.com. Go and sign up for our mailing list. We would love to have you part of the movement as we tell the world about the joy and healing powers of fly fishing, and as we all just kind of try to make sense of this life through the medium of fly fishing. Until next week, go fishing.